Hi, I'm actor Ian Champion, and welcome to History of Horror Cinema, my podcast series devoted to the good, bad, and the ugly of horror movie history. Please don't forget to like what you hear and hit subscribe. I have such sights to show you. The Ritz brothers weren't the only comedy trio mixing horror and humor on screen in the late 1930s. Over at Columbia, eyes were being poked and squabbling heads slapped between another even more madcap threesome, the Three Stooges. Between 1934 and 1975, the Stooges produced a huge output of over 190 slapstick film comedies and then TV shows, 8 of which I would classify as horror comedies. Their most famous cast comprised the perpetually grumpy, black pudding bowl haircutted Moe, the frizzy-haired, boffin-looking Larry, and Curly, who resembled a shaven-headed yet friendly ex-convict. But over the years, various incarnations brought back Shemp, who'd been in the first troupe, and adding Joe Palmer, Fake Shemp, Joe Besser, and Curly Joe DeRita to keep the act going like a continually recycled Motown act. The trio of unruly chaos merchants had Moe as their putative boss, yet it took time to establish him at the top of this dubious pyramid. Ted Healy, born in 1896 as Charles Ernest Lee Nash, was a Texan vaudeville actor who in 1922 met an old boyhood friend backstage whilst playing Broadway's Prospect Theatre. This was Moses Horwitz, better known to us as Moe Howard, an ambitious performer who'd already managed to blag his way into working within the early Hollywood studio system. In a 1970 interview, Moe recalled making, it must have been 40 or 50 films, just in the 3 years between 1908 to 1911. The youngest of 4 boys initially, he had started out in show business by running away from home to play 2 seasons on a Mississippi steamboat. From there, he created the vaudeville double act Howard and Howard, using his elder brother Sam, who we will come to know as Shemp. The 3 men would form the initial Ted Healy and his Stooges. They then picked up Larry Fine, real name Larry Feinberg, after seeing him as an MC at Fred Mann's Rainbow Gardens in Chicago. In Paul Garucki's documentary, Stooges, The Men Behind the Mayhem, Fine's sister Lila Fine-Budnick confirmed the story behind Larry's vaudeville violin act. It came out of a childhood accident at his father's jewelry store, when he almost drank an industrial gold-detecting acid out of childhood curiosity. His father's quick thinking saved him but burned his arm, weakening his dominant left hand. The doctor's idea of muscle-strengthening violin lessons would give the youngster the desire to be a concert violinist. His passion for this was ultimately overshadowed by his more natural comedic expression, although Fine's appearance as a stooge retained a distinctive, frizzy-haired professorial look befitting his earlier choice. The musical training would turn out to benefit him professionally in the Stooges' shenanigans, despite Healy's joining offer of $90 a week, adding, "I'll give you an extra 10 if you throw that fiddle away." The act played as a foursome until Ted and Shemp left for a Broadway show called A Night in Spain, but then reassembled for another, A Night in Venice, which was enough of a hit to get them onto the highly regarded B.F. Keith's Palace Theatre, where they were spotted by a Fox studio talent scout. This booking got them their first film debut in Soup to Nuts, a fire station comedy by writer-cartoonist Rube Goldberg. At this point in their careers, they were not an equal partnership. Healy was earning $1,000 a week, and out of this paying the other 3 $100. In the documentary, Ted Healy Jr. clarified, "The Stooges were my father's employees," and this caused a lot of friction, especially with Moe, because he was the better businessman than probably any of the other 4 were. Although the film was not a hit, Fox offered the Stooges their own contract. This inflamed Healy, who considered it a takeover of the act he owned. He forced the studio to retract their offer, which in turn caused the Stooges to break away from him as their own group. They couldn't take the original name with them, so they became Howard, Fine, and Howard, Moe, Larry, and Shemp, while Healy auditioned 3 replacement Stooges to identically recreate the original act. Clips of the new lineup certainly show a furious energy between the boys, but the chemistry wasn't the same. Eventually, promising to curb what was becoming a distracting drink problem, Healy won back the original threesome. In 1932, another recasting loomed though when Moe recalled that Shemp was offered the chance to take over from Jimmy Durante as Nobby in a series of shorts based on Joe Palooka, the comic strip heavyweight fighter already filmed as a feature. There is some confusion here in the timeline given by Moe, as none were released until 1936's For the Love of Pete. He did show up as a supporting player to Roscoe Arbuckle in the 1932 short In the Dough, amongst others. Shemp's reluctance to leave the team in the lurch was eased when Moe's kid brother Jerome, Curly, was drafted in, increasing the feuding familial chemistry on screen even further. Curly, born in 1903, had been gaining laughs as the guest comedy conductor with the Orville Knapp Band. He didn't take much convincing to join his brothers. To distinguish his look from Moe's basin-cut-haired gangster mug, coupled with Larry's boffin-esque wild locks, he had his wavy brown hair and moustache shaved off to a convict-style cue ball. Curly's mystifying stage name was invented to avoid family confusion. His lifelong nickname was Babe, like Oliver Hardy. But this was also the affectionate name given to Shemp's wife Gertrude. Babe thus became Curly Howard, and with his "nyak nyak nyak" and Brooklyn tones would certainly emerge as the most popular and recognized member of the team. The act was still known as Ted Healy and his Stooges when they were signed up with MGM in 1933 to make 6 feature pictures alongside luminaries like Laurel and Hardy, Joan Crawford, and Clark Gable. They also appeared in 5 two-reelers, 2 of which used the experimental 2-strip Technicolor process, such as Nursery Rhymes in 1933, recycling unused dance numbers left over from new color features. Whilst the films went over well with audiences, internal rumblings within the team came to a head once more, driven by Healy's excessive drinking and unequal sharing of the money for the trio that earned most of the laughs. Healy stayed with MGM, while the threesome broke away to forge their own identity. The most famous teaming under the new name of the Three Stooges was now in place. From here onwards, Moe echoed his on-screen dominance by running the team's finances and career decisions behind the scenes. One of his first was to bag them a 1-film deal with Columbia to make the short Woman Haters in 1934. This quickly led to Punch Drunks, which impressed their new employers enough to earn them a 7-year contract worth a 3-way split of $7,500 a week. This began a 23-year relationship with Columbia till 1957, during which the team would average 9 films per year spread over 40 weeks, allowing them 12 weeks off for personal appearances. We Want Our Mummy, 1939. Ted Healy died in December 1937 under mysterious circumstances after an altercation outside the Trocadero nightclub on Hollywood's Sunset Strip, becoming one of those much gossiped about Hollywood scandals due to his injuries and inconclusive accounts of events. Rather than indulge in speculation, let's focus on the contrived violence within the Stooges films as a more fitting legacy for him. It wasn't until their 37th film that the Stooges' chaotic cyclone of destruction encompassed a spooky edge in We Want Our Mummy in 1939. The hard work and rehearsals put in by the boys was matched with experienced comedy technicians behind the camera. This one was directed like many others by their long-term collaborator, the Canadian Del Lord, who started out directing Keystone Cops shorts for fellow Canuck Mack Sennett. The co-writer, Elwood Ullman, credited as Searle Kramer, had also written for silent comedy stars Buster Keaton and Charlie Chase, among others. In We Want Our Mummy, the Stooges take the pit helmet out of the famous Universal horror franchise, which until then only comprised the 1931 original. It would not be prized open and its bandages unraveled to begin regenerating until the next year with The Mummy's Hand. A basic premise is all the Stooges needed to hit the ground scrapping. Senior staff at the Museum of Ancient History are all afluster at the news of the venerable Professor Tuttle, Robert Williams' kidnapping. Professor Wilson, James C. Morton, and Bud Jameson's Dr. Powell fear he is the latest victim of the notorious curse befalling those who dare to seek the tomb of King Rootin' Tootin'. Their erudite research methods don't seem to extend to background checks in the modern world, as they all too willingly hire the 3 best investigators in the city to find him. Enter the Three Stooges backward with a snazzy a cappella sales jingle and bearded faces surreally fixed to the back of their heads. To give credibility, they've come equipped for the case wearing Sherlock Holmes deerstalker hats and each sucking one of his signature meerschaum pipes. Who could resist these super sleuths? The answer is their new employers, who belatedly realize they've made a big mistake. If the curse does strike them, it'll be a blessing to humanity. On hearing about the prior search for the king, Curly produces a playing card bearing one from a game. "How do you know the king was missing?" he asks furtively, earning a combined stomach punch and nose bop from Mo. The inventive gags come thick and fast, paced so there's never a pause to milk a joke past its due and to maximize the brief running time. They head to the basement as a logical starting point, which is sheer dumb luck, as Dick Curtis's lanky gangster boss has the professor bound and gagged in a box. Eager to please, they assist him by hefting the box onto a getaway truck. The curators offer our men $5,000 to go to Cairo after their colleague and the infamous ruler's tomb. Curly's coincidental relationship with an uncle who's a chiropractor confirms the client's pragmatism in dispatching these private dick heads. In the Three Stooges comic strip reality, hailing a Bronx cab will get them there. $2,198.55 later, they turn up in the Egyptian desert, where Curly flips over in the sand like a baby seal under the influence of a mirage oasis. His invite to the others causes them to dive bomb through the desert floor into the freakishly fortunate environs of the tomb, suggested ably by hieroglyphics, flaming braziers in the walls, and sarcophagi. The first goosebump moment for the kiddies comes with the Nosferatu talons of an unknown assailant, who abducts Larry and Mo, leaving the quaking Curly all alone briefly. He encounters a mummy within an upright sarcophagus, Theodore Lorch, who glares at his wittering with an eerie apple-cheeked intensity, and an improbably accented riposte more worthy of queens than kings. "That's what you think." A slap-up mix-up ensues when they take out another corpse believed to be Rootin' Tootin', but their tubby man-child falls on it, crushing it to ancient dust. This prompts a woo-woo switcheroo, forcing Curly to pose as the unlikely, well-fed and well-preserved regal remains of the king to prevent the gang leader from killing the professor. He is at least observant enough to grimace, "Boy, was he homely." All is tightly wrapped up by the discovery that the crushed cadaver was not Rootin' Tootin' after all, but his queen, HOHC Totsi. A sudden alligator appearance prompts a snappy exit from the Stooges. We Want Our Mummy is a fine jape-fest from Columbia's golden age of classic Stooges two-reelers, for when you're in the mood for humor that's wild rather than Oscar wild. Plus, the king gets an afterlife by later being referenced in Mummy's Dummies in 1948 and 1949's Malice in the Palace. As hideously unfunny storm clouds of war gathered over Europe, then across the globe, the Three Stooges would go on to apply their destructive tendencies to mock the monstrous rise of Hitler's Third Reich during World War II. Although America would not be unavoidably involved in the conflict until the bombing of Pearl Harbor in December 1941, the trio attempted their own campaign against him with the releases of You Nasty Spy in January 1940 and I'll Never Heil Again in July 1941. Thanks for listening. And if you like what you've just heard, don't forget to click so, and please hit subscribe. If you build it, they will come.